This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're just going to let people trickle into the Zoom room. Happy Friday. Okay. Ladybird, if you want to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So
welcome,
welcome everyone. So glad to be here and to have you join us on a Friday afternoon. I'm actually calling in from Seattle where it's smoky and rainy. So this is a wonderful way to spend my time. And I'm one of the counselors here with Mettle Health and have the privilege of sharing this incredible conversation today with Dani and Deb and Karen. And my background is nursing and social work, but I will leave that for later. Yeah, thank you.
And I'm Dani Chammas. I am a palliative care doctor and psychiatrist, amongst other identities in my life. And I am also, like Ladybird, just so excited, but also so honored to get to be a part of this discussion. And before we intro these truly amazing women who are joining Ladybird and I today, I wanted to take a quick moment to just give a little bit of background around why we decided to do this. Anybody who's heard me talk about my work has heard me talk about how much I learned from my patients about, what it means to be alive, what it means to be human and to be mortal. And I started doing some of these talks with Mettle not too long ago. And I was struck by the fact that without fail, at the end of each one, somebody from the audience would say something so beautiful and so insightful, and it would just stick with me. And finally, after the last one, I think it was you, Deb, who said something, and I couldn't take it anymore. And so I messaged Sonia and Ladybird and I said, we have to do a session that flips the script and flips the spotlight, and really lets people who are in the heart of actually living these topics share their wisdom with us all. So here we are. I'm going to pass it to Sonia to intro these beautiful, authentic women who are so generously sharing themselves today.
Yeah, ditto to everything she just said. So we have two wonderful members of the Mettle Health community joining us today. Karen Hewitt-Randall has always been a writer, loves to garden and connect with the natural world. She has two barn cats who are both very attached to her and her husband, and they even share dinner time. And she is also living with stage 4 lung cancer. Deb Vale lives in the mountains with her husband and her dog, Tulsi. She loves snow, river rocks, and native plants, and she is living with breast cancer. And we are so thankful that both of them are here sharing their experience with us. So thank you both. Quick logistics check from me as well. So this is going to be a little bit different than our usual talks. We're not going to have slides. We're just going to have a bit more of conversation, but we still want to open it up for questions from you, the audience, if you would like to. So same as always, you can raise your hand and ask your question out loud. The raise hand button is down at the bottom, or you can type your question into the Q&A section and I will read it aloud for our panelists to answer. So again, raise your hand and ask it out loud, or just type it in if you'd prefer not to do that, and I'll read it out for you. So again, this will be a little bit different than usual. So thanks for sticking with us as we kind of go through a new format. We're so excited to start this off. Thanks again.
Thanks, Sonia.
Yeah. And so Deb and Karen, just also to reassure you, there's no specific thing we have to talk about. There's nothing that Ladybird and I are, wanting you to say. We just, we thought we'd just chat and see where it takes us. So I figured I would start us off with a question just so we have a diving point. But one thing that I would love to ask you ladies is that I have noticed with working with different patients that sort of the hardest part, their biggest fear, their biggest struggle is just remarkably not the same from one patient to the next, right? Some of my patients are scared of the dying process. Others aren't at all, right? They're scared of being a burden or being forgotten or sort of any number of things. So as you ladies reflect on your own journeys, is there something that stands out to you as the most challenging piece or the hardest piece for you to grapple with?
Karen, go ahead.
I started with a heavy one. I should have started with a lighter one.
No.
Well, I think early on, the most challenging piece was just getting my hands around the chaos of a medical diagnosis and being forced fairly quickly to figure out what the fear was about. I really was completely paralyzed with the meaning of a cancer diagnosis. And it took a couple of months in my case to get the cancer staged. So I went through multiple surgical biopsies, numerous scans, a brain MRI, and I knew I was going to be presented to a tumor board, which sounded pretty intense, but the challenge of intellectually being told you have lung cancer and having that register intellectually, and then just the amount of fear that kicked in and being in what felt like crisis mode. And that persisted for at least 6 to 8 weeks. I had a sister I talked to, we made an agreement, she would call every day, and she did. And it would always be a conversation that ended with me in tears. So I think a big challenge was letting the cognitive piece kick in and really start to feel, okay, I can deal with this. I need to choose to deal with this and make a plan.
I love that point you make about there's the cognitive piece and then there's the feelings piece, right? And they're not always aligned as much as we wish we were, right? I do this work, I cognitively understand that we're all mortal. I cognitively understand that I'm going to die one day. But when I actually let myself go too far into putting myself in your shoes and imagining it, yeah, I feel petrified. It's a, you know.
Well, I tried to tell myself that everyone is going to die. And the only difference with my diagnosis was that I get a portal into what mortality looks like. So if I could just deal with that piece, I thought I'll be okay. But it was pretty chaotic early on.
Yeah. I have a question around that, but I want to hear Deb first about your experience. It's bringing up a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm relating back, and like I think it's changed for me in terms of what my challenge has definitely changed and evolved. But I think the one thing that has been current through it is just navigating everybody else's responses to what's happening with me. Feeling overwhelmed by communication with people and their feelings about things, and the overlay from culture and, you know, belief systems about illness and dying and what happens after death. I mean, there's so much that came into it. So I found myself in some ways kind of doing a lot of caretaking, and at the same time, I felt a really, really strong pull to be really quiet and centered. And so, and to find my own space within there. And then you put in doctors and, you know, I'm 3 hours from the hospital, and it was during the first part of COVID when, you know, it was really crazy because nobody really knew how to protect ourselves or what to do. So there was just so much to navigate that, and I wasn't able to be in my heart the way that I wanted to be. So, and I think that has somewhat continued throughout the whole journey in terms of that piece with my relationships with other people, and holding really true to myself, and at the same time trying to be open and have really beautiful relationships with all the people that are so important in my life. So
It's really, that's exactly what I was sort of getting curious about when Karen shared, is that navigating your own voice through this journey. And, how have you done that? My question is really around when you're sometimes in the mental space, or sometimes you're in the heart feeling space, or wanting to come towards your illness in a specific way, and then somebody you love comes towards you and they're in the opposite space than you are. How have you learned to meet that energy?
Well, Deb spoke to that beautifully with the notion of evolution, the way the process changed. And where I am today is so different, because what happened is, I hope this answers Ladybird, but it's as if my ego was trying to figure things out. And it might sound too broad, but there's been an evolution from ego to soul. And it's real for me. So that the having to give up autonomy, early on, I decided, okay, I'll turn my body over to oncology, to my care team, and I'll hang on to the soul piece. I'll hang on to the me-ness, if that's a word. So literally in a scan or an MRI or during radiation, I do have a mindfulness practice, and that became very, very important, just to hang on and to trust a process. And the whole time, Deb, you said being true to yourself. And I think the self got lost for me at some point. My identity just really was shattered. It absolutely was shattered. I just didn't think I could figure it out. And what I found out is that you get your identity back, but it's not the same. I am not the same person. And that will probably continue to switch around here and there.
Wow, I wonder if that isn't some of the challenge of being on the other side of that. So myself as a clinician, or as a friend, or a family member of somebody I love who's sick, my ego gets in the way. I go towards them and I'm seeing them as the person I want them to stay as, or the all of the stories that we've had, and I'm maybe not even maybe, I'm not evolving with them at the same pace that you would be evolving. And so it's such a challenge as a caregiver, and as a friend, and as somebody who loves somebody who's going through illness, to trust that I'm going to show up in the right way. It doesn't matter even how many times I've done it. I always worry, like, oh, am I meeting them at the right place? And so, Karen, you spoke to that really beautifully, like to kind of recognize that there's an evolution that's happening, that you're not the same person. You're still you, but you're not the same person. And do you have experiences? Have you felt that experience when you're with somebody and you can feel them meeting you where you're at? And how did you navigate that? Yeah,
I can, for sure. I have a lot of people that meet me where I am, and I'm really grateful to them. But I wanted to speak to what you said, Ladybird, because I think at the beginning there were times when I was disappointed when people couldn't meet me. Like, there were people that actually just walked out of my life, and people close that couldn't understand my decisions about treatment, that are people that I wanted to understand. And there was a lot of loneliness. And you at Mettle, on your webinars and working with somebody, has really helped me with that. But what I've come to, is realizing that I can't expect everyone to meet me there, that it's really my responsibility to navigate. I mean, it's almost like wherever my buttons are pushed by somebody not meeting me is where my work is. So it's like, that's where my internal work is to open up to that part, and also to meet them, not necessarily in a place of caregiving, which I think I could tend to do, but just to understand that they have their own emotions too, and they're going through their own process, and we're not all at the same place at the same page at the same time.
Yeah.
And so for me, the most important thing is just being able to be authentic. I love it when people can say, you know, you know, whatever it is, like, I really am happy to just come and sit next to you, and I don't have to say anything. You know, can we just lay in the grass together? Or somebody saying, like, this totally scares me when you tell me that you're having this kind of pain, and I don't know what to do with that. And then, you know, it's that authenticity that I think is most important, rather than asking a practitioner or friend or family member to be a specific way. And like I say, then for me to take responsibility for, wow, that really triggered me. You know, somebody says, well, it's just your karma because you got this disease. Okay, that's a trigger, and that's my internal work to make peace with whatever aspect of that you know, that comes up for me. So
It's a beautiful.
I guess the bottom line is, I don't expect you all to be perfect. So,
Piece though about authenticity, because I think caregivers, I think we all miss the mark sometimes, but I also think that at least the vast majority of us are not malintentioned, right? We're not malicious. People want so badly to be supportive, and we just, you know, sometimes don't know how. Do I say something optimistic, or is that going to invalidate their pain? Do I talk about it? Do they want a distraction? And we don't know. And you guys are speaking to, it's dynamic, you know, it might be different what I need in this moment. And so,
right. Yeah, I'd love to tell a story about when my mom was dying. And I've done, you know, been a hospice volunteer and have been reading and have been with a lot of people. Well, for not being a practitioner, I've had the blessing of being with a lot of people that have died. So when it came time for my mom's death, you know, I was doing all the things that I had learned and thought was appropriate. You know, I'm massaging her feet and, you know, moisturizing her lips and quiet room and all of that. And she was pretty much just, you know, unconscious and sleeping and everything. And then my brother, who has I didn't even think he was going to show up. He comes into the room and he was like, well, football game's over, Mom. And she like, who won? Did so-and-so play? Like, what was the weather? You know, were there any, you know, all these questions. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, here I am. I mean, I don't know anything about football. I couldn't have met her in that place, but he met her right where she was in that moment and spoke her language. And it was so humbling. It was so humbling, because I was trying, and I'm sure that she was caretaking me, meeting me as her daughter where I was, rather than the other way around. And then I came to accept that too. Like, maybe her last words and her last acts with me were actually caretaking me. So I think you really are onto something about it being so dynamic, you know?
Yeah, an exchange. I mean, that's a beautiful invitation to remember that there's actually a relational exchange happening. It's not you with illness and caregiver on the outside, but that there's actually an exchange, and that your mother is tending to you also, you know, that there's that quality that we don't always acknowledge. That's beautiful to remember that. Thank you for sharing that.
You guys also mentioned loneliness. Someone mentioned loneliness, and I would love to hear just a little bit more about this, because, you know, on the one hand, your journey is yours and you're alone. Nobody's been in your shoes. And on the other hand, you know, every human that has ever existed and every human that will ever exist is going to die. There's something so universal about this. So, you know, can you tell us a little bit more about the role loneliness has played or hasn't played?
Well, the notion of loneliness, I think COVID, I was diagnosed early in the second year of COVID. And so Steve, my husband, and I, we live in a rural area, and we had been pretty active with certain activities with friends, and it all came to a halt. So there was an isolation that I think we all had been experiencing because of COVID. And then cancer felt like an overlay, so that what had been isolating became even more rigid. There was less flexibility, and it was kind of an odd thing to have to give up social contact and give up some natural ways of being with friends, and then to have to make a choice to have new people who were medical people, oncologists, and a lot of contacts I didn't expect to have to deal with. The loneliness was real, and I think it put a burden on my husband in particular, who is very stable. He's a rock. He has a very solid perspective, and he has been by my side every single step of the way. And friends have been in touch, and even with the offers of help, and friends saying, I can pick up prescriptions. Do you need a meal? I can do anything that would be helpful. And often I would say, no, there really is nothing. And then I felt I was withholding something that would have helped to keep a relationship or keep a friendship. And I was kind of booted back to that cancer filter. So it's lonely, and it is isolating. And I think, again, this is recent, but Deb, you and I have talked about this, that what's happening to us, only we can do, only we can take on the real work of facing down cancer or doing whatever we need to do. So we're still living our lives and still living joyfully even when we can. And it's hard to figure that piece out. I don't know if that speaks to loneliness, but I certainly have felt kind of by myself. And then I think, gosh, I've got a bounty of support. I really do. And I need to be more open to it sometimes as I get my life back.
No, for me, the loneliness, I think, now I'm going to contradict stuff that I said before. So,
Perfect. That's great.
the loneliness kind of comes from, like, for me, the journey has been so spiritual. Like, it just took me beyond, like, I've done Stephen Levine's A Year to Live and mindfulness practices and spiritual practices my whole life. And I felt like I was really awake and aware. And, being in this state just opened up this whole other door. And it's so humbling. Everything is so precious. Everything is so precious. And there's that place of like falling in love with everything in the world, even more than what I ever have. And at the same time, knowing it's not going to last, in a way that is not intellectual, because I'm living with these symptoms in my body that I feel all the time. So it's not intellectual because I feel it in my body. It's like, to me, I mean, I relate to it almost like a pregnancy. I feel pregnant with death. And so so for me, the loneliness has been like to be in this state that feels so holy and so sacred, and not to be able to share that with some people that I would really like to share that with. And because of what their own triggers are. And I think like in our culture, we have, I mean, we talk so easily about the, death phobia, all of that, but there's all kinds of overlays of so much now in our society of, it's so easy for people to pull out, did you eat this? Did you do this fast? Did you, are you thinking these thoughts? Have you tried this? Did you go to the, a scientific view or an overlay of a spiritual path or whatever, and like to just slow down everybody and just say, God, what I've really wanted to say to people is like, will you just come and lay in the grass with me and just, I don't even want to talk. Can you just like really, really open up your eyes next to me? And can we watch the leaves of the caterpillars and listen to the birds? Do you see how beautiful it is? I kind of want to wake everybody up and say, do you know how beautiful it is? Like, and that's where the loneliness is, of like having just wanting everybody. I mean, this is probably something I'll want to have like cut out the video. But like for me, COVID was almost, I mean, there was a beauty in it of like everybody slowing down, and like if everybody did slow down and really opened up their eyes and saw like the miracle of everything that's going on, I just would love to be in that space with people, because I'm in it so often because of being in that sacred space. So.
Yeah, Deb, it's so, you articulate it so beautifully. Like I can feel myself just laying in the grass. And what immediately came to me was Mark Nepo's poem, and I'm going to completely butcher it. So please, anyone who's out there who does know that I realize this is not the accurate rendition, but he does say, everything is so beautiful and I am so very sad, or I am so sad. It's like both things. And it sounds like that what's so hard is to allow both grief and beauty, fear and joy, love and anger, all of these contradictions that we're always kind of thinking, oh, I need to go see Deb and I should be really happy, or, oh, we're going to lay in the grass and I should only feel the grass. And, but it's like, and you also realize it's not going to be there forever. And so there's this poignancy that is very much alive, but we don't usually go there. We're usually on the other end of it. We're usually either over here or over there, but that quality of slowing down and being able to actually feel multiple emotions at once, not just one emotion or a thought, is not, doesn't
to be
happen.
able.
No, go ahead.
Oh, Deb, you speak so beautifully, and I've had that that place in me when part of the loneliness is that I know I do have a different identity, and I'm alone because friends, they have needs and family have needs. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, I've got this new perspective that I'm coming to do a walk with a friend from a place of maybe not having as much energy as I once did. But this week I walked with a friend who, she is someone I can say, I am dying. And she will say, well, but you don't know when. And she said to me, I have to meet you where you are. She used those words. And I said, Myrna, thank you. And at the same time, trying to respond to people is tough, because I still struggle somewhat. I want to tell people what I think will take care of them, what will help them. And in talking with my sister recently, I said, I'm not afraid of dying anymore. And she just burst into tears. And it took me a while to figure out, oh, I think I know why. She thinks that not being afraid means I'm going to give up, that there's something about being afraid that will help, that will galvanize me to fight harder or stay more focused on cancer treatment. And it's not that, it's holding both, that I want to live. I believe in the joy of living, but it's a very different filter. And I wish I am having this kind of odd disconnection with the natural world, which is crazy. I'm in a beautiful place in Vermont, and I think that it's connected with going inward, and the beautiful natural world that is still all around me. I do have a more interior experience, but I was just really hit by the idea that fear is a driver in how I might be living my life. And it was early on, but not now. It's a whole different approach. I really trust notions of soul and community and embeddedness, just having a friend embedded in me, so that I don't need to do the caretaking so much, that there's a real belief that love is going to hold me and people who love me back. Even as I become weaker or sicker or make different treatment choices, it's ever evolving.
Embedded, it's beautiful.
I do so love this idea of like expanding our capacity to hold both. I remember even when I was thinking about this session, I thought, gosh, if we start asking about, what good has come, or, the beauties that have maybe been born of this, will it feel like I'm invalidating all the pain and all the hurt? And it's okay for it to be both. You can feel perpetually pregnant with death, right? And yet also be awakened to the feeling of grass. I love that. And I have this image from what you're saying, Karen, of how you sort of described, you broke into pieces and then the pieces came back into something new. What a beautiful image that is. And if you guys would humor me, I find myself wondering if you could be sitting here talking to the Karen and Deb of 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't know. Is there something that you would want to say to them? Is that too cheesy of a question?
Oh, no.
Deb, would you tell her to wake up, or?
I don't know. I think I don't know. I was in a Mettle session with my counselor, and it was a beautiful, beautiful session. And I asked the question of how can I love this person in my life better? How can I love my husband better? And so he was answering, and then I immediately went to how can I? Okay, so that translates to, then I need to do this, this, and this, and this. And he was like, no, this is about loosening the screws, not tightening the screws. And so I think if I were speaking to my earlier self, I would remind myself to loosen the screws and be more beneficent towards myself. I was trying to see, and I was trying my best. So I think I would tell myself to be ever so kind to myself. I think that is probably the message, to be kind to myself, and to realize that everything is holy, and all the stages and all of what comes, and all of it is so spectacular and so sacred. And I keep on thinking back, and because my husband and I had a farm, and I'm an herbalist, and so I've planted so many seeds, and there's this indigenous belief or ritual about when you plant a seed, you ask the seed whether or not it's willing to give up its life to go underground to become a plant to feed people. And so I think of that, I feel a certain responsibility to die, a responsibility for my life giving life, my death giving life. I mean, it's death that gives life. And so I think within speaking to my younger self, I'm so glad that I had that time so much in nature to see the cycles and really, really be in harmony with the seasons, and making dirt. Like when we sold our farm, it was like probably the most valuable thing on the farm was the 3 acres of dirt that we had made in the time that we had, which all came from dead material, so it's like, yeah, I think I would just be really happy with who I was and where I was, and to stop trying so hard and just loosen the screws. So, yeah.
I think about going back even 10 years, and I wish, knowing what we know now, that I've had this concept recently of the distinction between being a participant and being a witness. And I wish that I had paid closer attention to the moment and to what I know, I have always known. Everything changes. Everything really does change. And to observe it and to pay attention to it. And it almost sounds trite, but the quality of love that I've been surrounded with all my life. I've had so many gifts, and I did not know it, and I was not a good witness for it, so that I could reflect it back to the people in my life. And I guess I'm kind of an introvert, and kind of, it's odd because when I write, my heart's on my sleeve. And then when I'm with you, I'll be quiet and I'll be in the corner. And, but to really give voice to being able to say, I love you. And not just to my husband or to my family, but I had the experience of the woman at Dartmouth Cancer Center who she was guarding the COVID entrance and doing all the questions, and they've suspended that. So she greeted me recently and said, Karen, I won't be here. I won't see you. And I was going daily over all last summer. I just have been going a lot. And I just burst into tears. She is someone I've known for 1.5 years. And she's dear to me, and I let her know that. And that felt good, just the authenticity of love, and to give voice to it. I wish I'd been more vocal about that with lots of people, just to feel it so deeply now, and to think, well, how odd it would be if I said we have to go to the post office to get our mail, to let the person there know. It's just great to see you. I just love seeing you. And it sounds nutty, but it's a very singular lens. It really, really is, just to feel full of love. And that's kind of it. The cancer crowds out so much, and what's crowded out gets filled back up with love. It does. I don't know how to say it, but I'm so glad it does. It's in me now.
Ladybird, as I drink in their answers, I'm realizing what a selfish question that sort of was. Like, for me to get the gift of hearing those answers.
Well, I mean, not even so much selfish. I think, again, we're just trying to figure this out, right? I mean, there's this way that hearing you both share your experience, it reminds me that it's not about getting it right, and it's like that and it's okay, the things that you didn't do well or confused or all of those things, like that's kind of just it. And that the pressure we put on ourselves to get death right, and to be the right caregiver, and to be the right cancer patient. I mean, it's insane. Like, even this conversation could kind of turn into that. Like, how can we do this in the best way? Like, what are you talking about? Right. But what you're both bringing forward are these places of, our human, responsibility. You said this, Deb, and that's a big word, right? What is our responsibility as humans on the planet? to evolve, to regenerate, to love.
Right.
There's not a lot more. And all the other things come off of those wheels, right? So we love by our jobs, our families, blah, blah, blah. So all the other things are categories of those bigger moving qualities, which are in motion, right? And not so stagnant. And so what I feel from both of you is this: what would you do differently? Just remember to move the energy through that. And that leaving, that dying is also that offering of moving of energy, that there is a continuum. And it's not that our job is to live. It's also to die.
Yeah.
Right. But we don't like that part. And so we just take that off of the description. It's
Right.
just to live. Right. But that's actually not true. And so that disconnect, and what you both are, each time you speak, you're bringing that back into reality, which is there's so much incongruence. See that having cancer and navigating that landscape has given you the opportunity to bring some congruency back, which is kind of shocking. That's not what you necessarily would expect, right?
Right.
There's almost like a false dichotomy, right? Like as if Deb and Karen are dying and Ladybird and I are living, when in actuality, all four of us are dying. And all four of us are living.
Yeah,
It's just
beautiful.
like the
Yeah.
state of being human.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I called it the question selfish because I was realizing I was getting more from it. Like I was getting so much from it. In case that wasn't clear. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then how do I, so we're all living, we're all dying, and I get it here, but like, can I tolerate that truth, in my chest and in my heart?
Mhm.
I don't know. Like I see patients on Thursdays, and I swear on Fridays, I am just the most enlightened version of myself. I don't sweat the small stuff. I smell my kids' toes. It's just, I've been given this gift of perspective. And then something really crazy happens by Monday, Tuesday of the next week. I'm back in the weeds, like, should I have bought a house? Why is there traffic? Should I take a different route? It's like I lose it. And I don't know if that's your experience, if you feel sort of perpetually in contact with, for lack of a better word, this more authentic and enlightened perspective, or do you guys still slip in and out of it?
Oh God, yes. Of course. Yesterday I was so grouchy. Oh my God. Yeah, I was so grouchy, and yeah. But for me, I always, I regenerate by being outdoors and, it takes me very quickly to remembering. And I love what Karen, what you were saying about love and wanting to express that love, because that's, I think, I feel so humbled. Like I just feel like I just want to be on my hands and knees in praise all the time. And for me, what I feel like I missed probably the most, or like the air, the water, the sun, so Harry and I have started these rituals of getting up in the morning and going out and saying hello to the sun every morning, and saying goodnight to the mountain and the stars every night, and bring water from the New River, which is the oldest river in the United States, and bring it back and wash my face and hands, and just all of this ritualistic kind of stuff. And then I write little notes and leave them around, because I have to leave myself a bread trail. So no, I don't stay in it all the time. That's for sure. I leave bread. I would leave a bread trail, and the ritual and ceremony for me are critical. When I don't do them, I'm off kilter for sure. So yeah, no, it's like contraction, expansion, but I feel like the expansion now holds both the contraction and the expansion, if that makes sense. I'm just much more forgiving and beneficent towards everything, or trying to be anyway. And then, when I'm not trying to be. So.
Well, and willing to tend to the cultivation of that. I mean, the fact that you're land cultivating, that's been your life, but, we think about that, I think with, for lack of a better word, like consciousness or spirituality, or these places of, like you were saying, Dani, like where you are in this enlightened or a different space, but that somehow that should just come to you and you should just be there, and it doesn't require any honoring of, hey, I would like to be there, would you please meet me? And that there's a relational quality in those spaces also. They don't just magically appear. I mean, yes, sometimes they can, but there's also, we cultivate a lot of other things. You cultivated becoming a doctor, you know, trying to decide to have children. Like, we're willing to put effort into these other things, and we forget that those places of being also respond to our attentiveness. And so having that bread trail is the perfect thing, like, you know, putting out the seeds and inviting that space. Karen, do you have a
Karen,
bread trail?
I'm also just remembering that something you said at your very first comment. You said, I had to make a choice. I made a choice to sort of live in this other way. And so,
Yeah.
I do want to hear about the bread trail, but as you were saying that, Sonia, it just took me, or Ladybird, it just took me back to where Karen had started this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just trying to collect my thoughts. I think I'm today's realization is that ego and soul, I've been thinking about those two things, and ego runs away, soul stands its ground. And that just kind of hit me this morning, that what gives me resilience and strength is just, I'm bringing it back to love. I wish I had a better way to express it, but it's kind of a surrender to, okay, I'm doing all of this mechanistic, oncological magic. By the way, I'm blessed with an oncologist who is Japanese. He's got a humility that we meet each other. I've gotten to know him. He's gotten to know me. And I think he kind of gets the way I've been transformed as a patient over this year and a half. But if I can get out of my own way, if I can get out of the ego, and at the same time pay attention. I have friends who are in treatment for cancer, both breast cancer patients. I have a couple of lung buddies who have become very important, but my internal path, yeah, I need the trail of breadcrumbs to get back to my kind of internal North Stars. I guess there's one North Star, and I'm going to name it love again. And I wanted to remember there was a Mettle webinar that I got. I think it was, the person said, you don't want to get so steeped in your misery that you miss what your illness has to offer. And I was just so stunned by that. I thought, how can this be that cancer can bring something to me? But it wasn't too long after that I felt this shift, that I felt I could pay attention to some of the gifts that come. And I am not an optimist. I'm not a relentlessly perky person, but it's been true. There have been insights and gifts, and Deb, they do come from the natural world often. We see stars at night, incredible sunrises, and to pay attention to all of it, to kind of bask in the natural world, and at the same time, the gifts of science and medicine, and to kind of knit it together. It's chaotic sometimes, but I can get it down to a very simple principle of be compassionate and be loving, and loving kindness meditation. There are lots of ways to deal with cancer, and I don't know that I'm getting it right, but I'm trying. I just try.
That's all we can do.
I wish I could tell you, Ladybird, correct me if
Notes.
I'm wrong, but I find myself writing down. I've written down
Yeah.
so many of the things you ladies have said today because there's
Thank you.
like so much.
Yeah, no, I'm
really
gonna
that
have
you're
to
giving
re-listen
us.
to it. Actually, I decided to stop taking notes, and I'm just gonna have to re-listen because
I
it's
know.
Well,
amazing.
I
And
have-
every time you're talking, I'll write down 6 questions, you know, and I'm like, oh God, I only have to pick one, and I'm sure that Ladybird has like 6 that branch off it too, and so oh, it's like unreal. But I'm also mindful of time, and I wanted to check, Sonia, if you could let us know if any of the audience had questions. We'd love to hear your voice. We'd love to hear your reflections.
Yeah, thanks, Dani. So while you guys were speaking, one question did come in, and Karen and Deb, this would be for you if you're comfortable answering. And it's just how, when you were, when you received your diagnosis, how did you decide who to tell and when to tell, and how did you bring it up with people?
Karen, I'm happy to answer, but if you'd like to go ahead to whatever.
I think my husband was with me. So when one hears the words, "You have cancer," and I was looking at the scan and I was just stunned. I think I was in shock, and I could hear the doctor talking, and I could hear the initial plan being made. And I do remember calling my sister and my brother, and it was hard. It was very hard. And the first friend who heard about it, I was out with Steve at a garden nursery, and she was the very first friend I had seen. And I told her, and she was just, I wanted to hold her. I wanted to help her, and there was nothing I could do. She looked so stricken. And I thought, this is hard. Do I really want to share this information? It's hard for people to take it in. And I think when I told people, I said, my intention is to live life fully in all the space that's not occupied by treatment. And boy, that sounded great, but boy, it was just BS. It just didn't work that way. I wanted to be the healthy cancer patient. And I didn't tell people very gracefully, but I did do it so I could let others witness my cancer, just so I wouldn't be alone with it. I don't know if that's responsive. Deb, what did you do?
Well, ironically, I found it at the beginning of COVID, and 2 of my adult daughters were here visiting, and I hadn't seen one of them in a very long time. And I literally got the phone call like 15 minutes after she walked in the house. So they were both here. So I came out of the room, and yeah, so that just happened. I don't even remember. I think they were right outside the room, so they heard before my husband. So yeah, and then I have 2 other adult kids, so that it just naturally kind of extended, and I think it just happened pretty naturally with my closest circle of friends, with everybody knowing. I think within a day, I told everybody. The next circle out was a little bit more difficult, and I didn't really know how to manage that. And my husband had, he broke his, he fell off the roof and broke his back, and recovered from that, and then had open heart surgery. And I was all about telling everybody like intimate details about his recovery on Facebook, and I had all these people and everything. And it's been 2 years now, and I still have not made an announcement on Facebook or told anybody there. So and I am profusely apologizing to my husband for being so, he was fine with it. He's really loose and everything, but it's been very personal. So it's awkward, and I think it's yeah, I think there was a organic process that just happened that I didn't even think about, and then the place where I had to be more conscious about it was awkward for sure.
And I think back to some of the lessons that you ladies shared earlier, right? Like be kind to yourself. Like you're just figuring it out. There probably isn't one right way to tell people, right? You know, like,
Exactly.
and what feels authentic, and know that you're
Yeah.
doing your best.
Yeah. And my response when I found out, because I have Lyme disease, so I've had like chronic illness for a very long time before I got the diagnosis. So my response when I heard actually had some relief and validation in it for how bad I've been feeling. So that was actually really confusing for my adult children. Like my one daughter, she's like, you almost look like you're happy that you have cancer. And I'm like, no. But it's like to have this mysterious, weird illness that I've been navigating for so long, and to know now that with the size of the tumor that I was also growing cancer at the same time, answers a particular mystery of something. So I think even our responses to the diagnosis, I would never have expected me to have that kind of response of that. So I think even that, I think we need to be gracious with ourselves of what comes up when we hear. So
Yeah.
Deb and Karen, we're so near to the hour. And I feel this pull to share with you a story from this week, and I'm wondering if you'll humor me.
words. Oh my gosh, yes.
So Wednesday, we were a little nervous talking today, but Wednesday I was really nervous because I taught this traditional Lebanese dance to my daughter's class of 6 to 8 year olds, and my skills with dance are marginal at best. But I was very, very nervous, and I was going to use this song of my grandma's. She was a pretty, successful singer and performer in the Middle East. And as I was trying to calm my nerves in front of the room, I felt her. I felt my grandma, and it wasn't like I felt her as a presence outside of me, but I felt her inside of me. Like I felt the pieces of her that have just become pieces of me, right? They're sort of woven into who I am. And I drew all of my courage from that. And so I do have a point to this story, but I think we all have different beliefs about what happens after we die. And I've been thinking a lot the past couple of days about this idea of how we live on and how we impact the people around us. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, I feel like you guys offered pieces of yourselves to us today that are going to sort of continue to walk this earth inside of the rest of us, and all of us that you've touched today. And so there's really no greater gift. So thank you. Thank you so much.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say that, like, when you all were talking about taking notes, do you know how many Mettle sessions that I've been in with trying to quote you guys and then going back and watching the recordings? And part of my breadcrumbs are things that you've said in your webinars. And I have a whole notebook of them and a whole folder of things that you've said. And there have been some like real turning points for me. So I want to reflect back the same exact thing to you. You guys are part of me, and I'm carrying you with me in this journey in a really, really deep, palpable way. So I thank you.
And that is what I call embeddedness. That is something new and coming to, and embeddedness. I thank you, Dani and Ladybird and Deb, my friend.
Thank you for saying that word embeddedness again. I was going to say that I, if nothing else, I want to honor this time by letting you know that this has imprinted into my understanding of being alive. And so I have no idea what that means. I just know that there's been a little paw print. It feels like a little, cat kind of pressing on your heart, like, yes,
That's beautiful.
has landed. This has landed.
Mettle has been so amazing for me, and for me to meet Karen, and we've become friends and talk on the phone and email, and it's just it's been such a gift. I'm the counselor that I work with, so I like that, especially the version of the little paw print like that. That really sticks. I'm gonna think of that. So that's it exactly. Embedded, imprinted, part of. So I have this Rumi poem that I would love to share before we close, because this has been kind of, I don't know, it's been a guiding light, a big breadcrumb for me. So, and I've been to Turkey and to Rumi's Derga 4 times in my life and gone on pilgrimage there. So Rumi's very important to me. So, but this poem for me is, for 60 years, I've been forgetful every minute, but not for a second has this flowing toward me stopped or slowed. I deserve nothing. Today, I recognize that I am the guest that the mystics talk about. I play this music, this living music for my host. Every day today is for, everything today is for my host. Everything today is for the earth. So
Thank you.
may our embeddedness move through us.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Wow. Beautiful. You can just stay here all morning.
I was gonna say
I won't be getting off the Zoom. I'll be sitting here for a while now.
right, just marinating.
Wow. Thank you so much. So honored.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Dani. Thank you, Ladybird. Thanks everyone else for just, being here and listening. Really, really appreciate it. This was so beautiful, and I'm very thankful. So thanks everyone. Happy rest of your Friday. Happy weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.